Today we are going to talk about the next topic, motivation. So, as usual, we will be talking about the word motivation. We will have a small introduction about it. Then we will be discussing about the definition of motivation, various characteristics of motivation. We will also be talking about the types of motivation, and last we will be talking about some theories of motivation. Okay, and end of the session we will be talking about various techniques that we can use in classroom to motivate or work with our children. So what is motivation? According to you, what is motivation?
Motivation is something that gives mental support and confidence to a person.
Motivation is something that energizes us mentally to achieve something.
Right, so motivation is something that inspires us. It gives us energy and satisfaction when we achieve our goal. Historically speaking, the word motivation comes from the Latin word called movers or movers, okay, which means to move. In its literal meaning, we can say the word motivation means to move, the process of including and instigating someone to put their best forward. Okay, it is it is an energy, it is an inspiration, okay, that is goal driven. We can say it is goal driven. It is an inner force, right? So according to Guilford, a motive is a particular internal factor or condition that tends to initiate and sustain an activity. Motive is basically different from a stimulus. In the absence of internal motive, the stimulus may not work. We can understand that motive is both internal as well as external. The factors that motivate us can be internal also, and it can be external factors also. Basically, in when we are talking about motivation in psychological aspect, motive includes only those factors which controls the activity of a living being. So it will not include anything like mechanical or reflex actions. Okay? A human is very different from animal in terms of behavior, especially in terms of mechanical behavior. So let's understand this with a very famous example. See, it is said that you can take a horse to the water, but any amount of effort you put on the horse, it will drink the water only if it is thirsty. So the presence of water will not help. The horse will not drink the water until and unless it is thirsty. But human are different. They eat, drink, and they have conditions which is beyond our physical or mechanical behavior. So we understand that the term motivation refers to the driving and pulling force which results in persistent behavior which is directed towards a particular goal. Now let us go through few definitions of motivation. According to H.W. Bernard, motivation refers to all those phenomena which are involved in the stimulation of action towards particular objective, whereas previously these were little or no movement towards those goals. Now, according to Atkinson, the term motivation refers to the arousal of tendency to act to produce one or more effects. Marshall says that motivation is constant, never ending, fluctuating, and complex, and it is an almost universal characteristic of particularly every organismic state of affairs. You can keep in mind one of these definitions for your long answer questions. Let us understand the basic structure of motivation. So, as we already discussed, motivation can arise from internal and and external basis. Okay, people have physiological needs like the need for love, self esteem, and self actualization. Okay, the physiological needs can also include hunger, thirst, sleep, etc. So let us understand how these physiological causes work. Let us take one example of hunger. So, what happens when you are hungry? The blood sugar level goes down. Okay, when our body is deprived from food, there is a chemical imbalance that happens in the body. Okay, see, the sugar that is present in our body is very crucial for cellular activities. So, when the sugar level comes down, the body sends a signal to the brain warning of low blood sugar, and the brain immediately responds by generating hunger pains in the stomach. So, you might have heard about hypothalamus. Hypothalamus of our brain plays the main important role in eating behavior of all the animals as well as human being. So one experiment that was done, and the hypothalamus was stimulated, which caused all the animals to start eating regardless of their blood sugar level. So stimulation of this hypothalamus causes animals to stop eating or to start eating. The hunger pangs start happening because of the working of our hypothalamus. And this is the basic expression for hunger in the body. Okay, so when the body gets these hunger pangs, there is a motivation that is generated, and the motivation here is to have food. So this is a internal factor which is affecting motivation for food. There can be external factor also, like somebody wants to eat something that they dreaming of, for example a fancy dinner at a very fancy restaurant. So this motivation is different. Hunger is not the it's not an internal motivation, but the motivation is external. For example, a sports person choosing to eat very high calorie diet, the motivation is not hunger, just hunger, but there is another external motivation of winning the game. And factor that motivates here is not just hunger, but it is self esteem. We will learn about this in when we discuss about some of the theories of motivation. So we understand that motivation is internal as well as external, and it is also goal oriented. Let's look at some more nature or characteristics of motivation. So the first one is goal oriented. The motivation is always goal oriented. Motivation remains till the achievement of goal. When your hunger is over, your goal is over, and your motivation ceases off. Then your focus moves to another goal. So after the achievement of goal, the motivation also gets over. Motivation is innate in nature, which means that there are some motivations which we have been born with. Okay, it is programmed in us. For example, our primary goal in life is to meet our physiological needs like hunger, sleep, etc. So this is an innate in nature. This motivation is innate in nature. Likewise, motivation is also learned, which is attained after birth. We see and we learn. It is learned also, innate as well as learned. When we are motivated to do something, it can create tension in us, right? So motivation can create tension, and once we achieve what we want to, like when once we achieve our goal, we relax down. So motivation can create tension and relaxation in our body. Motivation is basically an inner state. It is a psychological state. It cannot be explained or quantified, uh, but it can only be understood in an abstract manner. Now, when our goal changes, what happens to our motivation? Our motivation towards that old goal also changes. Okay, So, motivation is not permanent, it is temporary in nature. So, how to understand motivation if we cannot see the motivation, we cannot quantify motivation? How do we understand motivation? It can be understood by our behavior. So, motivation is a part of behavior science also. So far we have understood that motivation is a goal directed behavior. So, psychologically, this has a sequence which is called motivational sequence. Okay, so first is the need, there is a need, then there is a drive for it, then you get an incentive, and then the reward, that is the goal. Whatever we achieve with our motivation, the goal is the reward. A motivational sequence occurs both for motivation arising out of intrinsic as well as extrinsic factors. Our next topic would be types of motivation. So, to understand this, we have to understand Maslow's motivational hierarchy. So, let us move into our next segment, types of motivation. When we are dividing the motives, we can divide the motives into four major groups or categories: physiological motive, social motive, personal motive, and unconscious motive. Now, our physiological motive, such as hunger, thirst, sleep, they are referred to as primary motive because they serve to maintain our biochemical or physiological balance in the body. Motives are also called as biological motives, primary motive, or organic motives. Now, here you can see what are the physiological motives: hunger, thirst, respiration, the need of respiration, elimination, sleep and rest, and sex. So, hunger and thirst, all these five motives: hunger, thirst, respiration, elimination, sleep, and rest, these are all primary biological motives without which the human survival or the body survival is not possible. Sex, and on the other hand, is not essential for survival, but it is essential for the survival of the species. The next is social motive. It is also known as affiliation motive. We, as you all know, are social animals. So survival in a society is also very important for us. So we affiliate ourselves to certain aspects in the society. This is very important for a smooth living. After we affiliate ourselves with things and situation and environment, we look for status. Okay, so what does a status mean here? It means the very essential feeling of belongingness. Okay, so we need to belong somewhere, we need to have some kind of a position somewhere to survive in a society. So status is another aspect of social motive. Next is power motive. The last one we see is social approval. So power motive, everybody wants to be respected in the society. Okay, everyone wants to have some kind of a control and power. This is a human nature. So this is the power motive. And social approval, we do a lot of things for social approval also, right? So social approval is another aspect which motivates us for things what we behave and do in our life. Now the next one is unconscious motive. So here we will be dealing with four subpoints: fear, curiosity, aspiration, and achievement. Now, what is fear? At birth, we have no fear, right? You have seen children jumping recklessly from high tables, chairs, and crawling under, unsafe zone. So they have no fear. We are not born with fear. Fear is something we learn. It is based on our perception that we build fear, right? So, psychologically speaking, when we repress our feelings, especially of fear, it becomes unconscious motive in us and it becomes phobias and illness. It turns into phobias and illness. So, fear is an unconscious motive. We try to protect ourselves from our fearful situations. Like some people have fear of poverty, some people have fear of heights. So, they avoid coming into such situations in their life where they have to face fear. Achievement. So you might have seen three categories of people. One are high achievers, the other one are medium achievers, the others are low achievers. Okay, so when you compare their perception and thoughts, everything varies. Okay, high achievers, they have a different outlook and reasoning towards life, whereas low achievers have different perception of life. So our achievement also defines our motives in life. So, when we talk about personal motives, achievement is one key factor which determines our personal motives in life. Aspiration, again, is an individual's perception. It is based on our achievements and what kind of achievements we have been having in our life. We aspire for things differently. So, some people may aspire for a big luxurious car, some people may aspire for a peaceful life. Aspiration is also one unconscious motive that is set in us. Same with curiosity. Okay, based on individuals' curiosity and their ability to solve problems, our motives are also determined. Now, let us move into our next segment of theories of motivation. There are many theories of motivation, but here we will be discussing only six theories of motivation. The first is instinct theory, the second is push or drive theory, third is psychoanalytical theory, fourth is incentive theory of motivation, fifth is goal oriented theory, and the sixth one is Maslow's theory of need. So, what does instinct theory tell us? Instinct theory says that we all are born with some kind of instincts in us. Okay, we are born, and these are the gifts of nature. We are pre programmed with certain motives. So, this programmed motives direct us for certain motivations and goals in our life. Now, push and drive theory says that our behavior is goal directed and it is due to our drive that we push ourselves to achieve goals. The third one is Sigmund Freud's theory. It is called psychoanalytical theory. Sigmund Freud basically says that there are only two motives in a human being. One is a life motive and the other one is death motive. To Sigmund Freud, life and death instincts are very fundamental instincts in human being. And according to him, when the person finds that there is no use for living further, he moves into a standstill situation, and this is a movement towards a death. We will be understanding this theory in detail when we talk about personality, when we go through personality lesson, and here he will be explaining a lot about why people commit suicide and all that. So we will go through this in detail again. The next motivational theory is incentive theory of motivation. See, as we know that our behavior is goal oriented, we are moving towards to attain something in life. Okay, so this is a positive reinforcement in us that we keep moving towards our goal. So we keep moving towards a positive incentive. I told you that there is a need in us, which the need creates a drive. The drive is moving towards the incentive or the reward, and ultimately this reward is our goal. So this is incentive theory. Incentive theory says that all our behavior are moving towards an incentive or a gratification in life. Goal oriented theory again says that human behavior is goal oriented, and anything that we do is towards a goal. And when this goal changes, our motivation also changes. The last one is Maslow's theory of need. Discussed this in one of our previous videos also. Let us brush through the topic once so that you understand the whole topic motivation completely. So, Maslow's motivational hierarchy theory was given by Abraham Maslow. He was the founder of humanistic psychology. He classified human needs in a hierarchy. Now, Maslow's motivational theory describes people's motive into a form of a pyramid shaped structure with all the needs written down according to their importance. So, here, physiological need is at the base. The need of love, achievement, and understanding at a higher level. And the last one, the top one, is self actualization. You can see here in the diagram also. So, the first one is the basic physiological need, such as food, drink, shelter, and rest. So, when this is all satisfied, we move to the next level and we go for a next motive seeking behavior. The next level in the pyramid is the need for security. We all need to be secured. Okay. Once our physiological needs are met, like hunger, thirst, etc., we move to the next level where we look for security in life. Okay, the security is to be away from stress and uncertainties in life. Well, we look for steady jobs, right? So, why do we look for a steady job? To get a steady source of income. Okay, so that our needs are met on a proper level. This is the next stage in the pyramid of Maslow, security. Once the safety needs is satisfied, the person moves into the next level where they look for affection towards another person or a family. In the fourth segment, the person moves into the need for self esteem. We spoke about it. Self esteem is the need of a person to have respect for others as well as respect for one own self. Then the person moves into the higher level of need. It is the cognitive need, wherein the people look for more understanding or more knowledge based environment. As we go higher into the pyramid, we will see aesthetic need. Okay, aesthetic need is the need of a person to the sense of beauty and aesthetic value in his own life as well as around himself. Here, imagination and perception play a very important role. The next one is this is the last or the highest level according to Maslow. This is the level of self actualization. Very few people feel the need for self actualization because very few people reach there. It is the need to find self fulfillment or to reach a stage where all the potentials have been maximized. Some of the characteristics of people who have reached this stage are like honesty, creativity, acceptance for others. Maslow calls this level, the self actualization, as a peak of experiences. Maslow did not claim that a person's physiological needs have to be completely satisfied before he or she can achieve the highest level of fulfillment. However, if a person's basic physiological needs are met, that person may be in a better position, to satisfy the emotional needs also. So, how do we apply the motivational theories in the field of education? We will be discussing few points here. First, let us discuss about the application of motivation in the field of mental retardation so that we can understand the concept better. So, when we are talking about children with ID issues, we do understand that they have a underdeveloped condition of the brain, and the motivational process here will be much more complicated than what we have to deal with normal people. So, many times This has to be directed behavior, and it will not be observed in children very easily. So we will have to identify all the needs and supply the drive in children with mental handicap. And how do we do it? We can do this by introducing teaching techniques based on learning theories, which can help them to achieve their goals. So, in our IEP, we will have to identify goal directed assessment. The proper assessment has to be done, and how it has to be implemented, and how we will be using our teaching techniques to achieve our goals by motivational theories. Let us understand how do we use motivation in our classroom learning and teaching. Once, as a teacher, when you recognize a behavior or something, a stimulus that motivates a child, include it in your own activity, in your lesson plan, and bring in the interest of the child and let all the children participate in this activity. So, this will be like recognizing and attending to the behavior that motivates a child, particular child, for better performance. So, when we see that children are participating in a particular kind of activity or particular kind of behavior, so we can increase the participation by increasing the motivational factors inside the classroom. For example, when you give a star to the child, it motivates the child, right? So when you see the whole class is being participative for a recognition or a reward like a star in the hand or a chart paper, so increase that kind of activities in your classroom. Motivational theories can be used to improve our classroom management skills also. For example, using of audiovisual aids improve attention span of children. So we can motivate them to learn better or focus better, and especially through the subject which they find boring. So you can use your audiovisual aids also for teaching purpose. Sometimes using a blackboard also works. So, as a teacher, you will have to use the blackboard regularly, almost every day. You must use it. But when you call children up front and help, make them participate in the blackboard activity, it improves teaching in the classroom. Now we become an example, and we as teachers show some behaviors like we include what, why, how in certain subjects or facts, and we constitute this as our lesson. So this will also improve their skill of explaining things. Also, it will help us to explain things better to children. It improves our closure skills. Closure skill means to finish some task. So when a teacher delivers a lecture and she sums up properly and in a very attractive manner, this is termed as closure skill, and this is very important for effective learning. In the absence of a proper closure, the lesson remains ineffective for children.